G'day guys, welcome back to Death Valley Gaming. Guys, I'm pretty pissed off at Valorant, as I'm sure you've all seen if you've been watching the streams of recent, and what Valorant's done to the game. So guys, what I've done, I've gone and done a very deep dive into finding out why Riot's like it is, why we're having the problems we're having, and if there's going to be any fixes to the problem. Sadly, this video is going to probably make your skin crawl because of what I've discovered. Moving forward in the next 5 videos after this, obviously 10-15 minute videos, you're going to find more out about the game, more out about the crypto scandal with crypto throwing and the boosting, stacking, new rules, things like that as well. And how the business side of Riot has been failing, making massive financial mistakes, the esports scene being a complete and utter joke, and is a massive financial loss for the company as well. The sexual harassment side of it in this video as well. The culture of Riot is pretty disgusting. And yeah, just pretty much giving you guys a holistic picture of what's going to happen with Valorant in 2023, if it's going to be actually alive in 2024, and Riot's MMO, and why we're going through what we are in Valorant right now. Welcome to the episode. All right, guys, let's just get straight to the crux of it, okay? I'm going to hit this hard and fast. I'm not going to waste your time, but I want you to understand the true company Riot is. It's an indie development company. Keep that in mind. This is going to be run over 6 different videos, because if I put it into one video, it'd end up being a documentary. It'd be over 2 hours and nobody's going to watch it that way. I know lots of people are busy, and you know, you've got lunch breaks and things with work and school and stuff like that, and you've only got a limited time to watch things. So I'm going to compress this whole series down into 6 different short videos, and that way it's more easily digestible and at your own leisure. So, saying that, let's just get straight into it. Riot Games to pay $100 million in a gender discrimination case. Riot Games, the video game maker behind popular titles like League of Legends and Valorant, said on Monday evening that it had agreed to pay $100 million to settle a gender discrimination suit with more than 2,000 current and former female employees. The class action lawsuit, which was filed in 2018, was originally on track for a $10 million settlement. Nowhere friggin' near enough for that many employees. But in early 2020, the women suing Riot changed lawyers, and the new lead attorney, Jeannie Harrison, determined that the amount was not sufficient. 2 California employment agencies also took the unusual step of objecting to the settlement, arguing that the women could be entitled to over $400 million. Separate of the lawsuit, the state had been investigating the company already after claims of sexual harassment, discrimination, unequal pay, and retaliation against women. All right, this is physical harassment, okay? These guys were having women stand up in the boardroom, deliver a fantastic, groundbreaking idea, right? Something that would improve the company dramatically, or improve League of Legends at the time, or Valorant. Then again, just, dismiss, it's crap, you're not doing it. The next day, a male employee has gone into their computer, this is an IT development company, and hacked in, stolen that woman's work, and then represented it in front of the boardroom and got the promotion with their work. Not their work, but the woman's work that was overseen the day before and totally ejected now is relevant, and the guy got a promotion. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's move into phone numbers being texted, disgusting, creepy voicemails being left on these women's phones by other male senior executive employees. An internal betting system where they would bet if they can get this woman into bed, how they do it, when they do it, whether they do it, nicely or forcefully. A bunch of other really messed up shit, okay? What's happened is basically the Federal Bureau of Investigation looked into this and found this to be true. So over 200 male employees, mostly senior executives, middle management, and normal staff, lost their jobs and were charged with offenses under American law to start with, right? The CEO was also embroiled and had to step down. What does that say to you? This is an indie development company, not a AAA. So the fact that any of this happened in the first place is purely unforgivable. Unforgivable in every way possible. So, guys, look, I'm going to put this video up. And this video is done by Upper Echelon, YouTuber, big YouTuber. He has put together such an eloquent, well-researched, put-together video. If I was to do the same thing, I'd come up with the same results and at the end of the day be regurgitating what he's already done. So what I've done is I've given him credit, put his details of his video in full, including the paid advertisement he has for his sponsor in the description below. So he gets full credit for his video, and I'm using his video that's been edited down to compress for time for fair use purposes. But yeah, it's an excellent video, and I would highly recommend, if you believe in cutting through the crap, definitely subscribe to Upper Echelon and click the like button, and obviously follow for all of his videos. He is fantastic. He's like me, he just says it how it is, but much more aggressively. But hey, he stays within the rules. So guys, look, I'm going to play this video for you now, and when we come back, we'll wrap up this video. See you in a sec.
All right, today, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting topics that I've ever covered before on the channel. Before publication, I sat here for probably almost 2 hours, simply trying to think of a title. The most powerful man in gaming, or the psychological manipulations of Riot Games. I wanted to find something that adequately expressed what the video was about, but with so many key factors involved, it felt nearly impossible. I settled on, obviously you've already read it, The Birth of Toxicity, a Psychological Laboratory, but the totality of this video will include a history of Riot Games, a discussion of the most powerful man you likely never heard of in the entire gaming industry, the birth of a now mainstream buzzword and behavior modification trend, as well as psychological experimentation that has influenced platforms and companies from Twitter to Reddit to Activision Blizzard and far beyond. It all starts with Jeffrey Lin. Currently working at Facebook, I refuse to call it Meta, he is the creative director of Horizon Metaverse, but far more interesting than where he is where he came from. Let's go back in time to 2012. Jeffrey Lin majored in cognitive psychology with a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. Co-authoring multiple papers, such as Capture of Attention to Threatening Stimuli Without Perceptual Awareness, his early work centered on behavior modification. In 2012, he accepted a job at Riot Games as the lead social systems designer and proceeded to change the very fabric of the industry. The word toxic or toxicity is not new. The word has been defined as poisonous, harmful, or unpleasant for centuries and can be traced through history to its initial origin of medieval Latin. It's not an uncommon word, but prior to 2013, the terminology was not exactly a fixture of video game culture. Of course, nowadays, you hear it all the time. Toxic players, toxic behavior, oh he's just toxic, or toxicity is the real problem. There are even multi-corporate alliances to fight against toxicity. But where did the phrase even start? You would be hard-pressed to find any meaningful evidence of widespread usage before 2013, because in 2013, Jeffrey Lin gave a prominent speech at GDC, also known as the Game Developers Conference. This particular speech was about shaping behavior in online video games and had a particular emphasis on toxic players and toxic behaviors. Jeffrey Lin believed that it was Riot's responsibility, a moral and ethical responsibility, to curb those behaviors that he deemed as toxic, and outlined various different methods by which developers can try to do exactly that. The speech itself is quite fascinating, but when analyzed in context, it becomes terrifying. Jeffrey Lin, also known as Riot Lite, was a notorious figure in the League of Legends community for about 3 years. He led the company's effort to eradicate toxic behavior, but in a way, he also, not more than just in a way, he actively engaged in it. League of Legends, over the years, has had a number of different features, updates, and changes, but one of the most notorious failures was called the Tribunal. The Tribunal was effectively crowdsourced justice by popular vote. Players could participate, look at chat logs, and then decide guilt or innocence after a report had been filed. It was not the ultimate executioner in all cases and could not hand out permanent bans by itself, but temporary suspensions and chat penalties were very common. It sounds good on paper, but there was a bit of a problem. Participants were capable of earning rewards, called IP at the time, if they successfully ruled on a punishment case. There were additional features like a forced period of time, 60 seconds, before you could vote to stop people from just click spamming through all of them, and I even did some of these myself back in the day when it was live, but a fairly obvious problem began to appear, which would have disastrous consequences. When you incentivize punishment, handing out rewards for successful convictions and suspensions only, you all but guarantee that the scales will tilt in that particular direction. Players began to hand out punishments for everything in order to get rewards, and eventually the tribunal was taken down completely. This may seem irrelevant for our purposes today, owing to the fact that the tribunal existed in a rudimentary form before Geoffrey Lynn even joined the company, but bear with me. In his time there, when the tribunal was still active, Riot Light, Geoffrey Lynn's in-game moniker, became well known in the community for smiting people. This was a term that referred to his propensity for copying in-game chat logs that he obtained himself from Riot servers from the tribunal, and then posting them on Reddit or other forums to embarrass or humiliate people who complained about the feature wrongfully banning them. An entire subreddit was built around that specific phenomenon, which came to be known as light smites, and it happened frequently. At first, the community adored him. He was putting the trolls in their place and dishing out some well-earned karma, but over time, things began to change. Now, Riot Light, regardless of his forum activity, which is important to understand for context, but in addition to this, he was not solely interested in humiliating those that he personally deemed to be toxic. He was far more interested in greater influence over video game culture. And in 2015, using his position as the lead social systems designer at Riot Games, he began to seek precisely that. Referred to by Wired as the largest virtual psychology lab in the world, Riot Games began to conduct surveys, we'll call them. In an effort to curb toxicity by altering inappropriate usernames, that's their official title for it, wide swaths of the player population began to receive surveys. These were not ordinary surveys, and they were also highly incentivized because players were having their name forcefully altered in-game to something benign and randomly generated. This is what the surveys looked like. Questions about whether or not the person needed to be the center of attention. Questions about whether or not they think they are better than others. Questions about whether or not they are willing or likely to follow orders, and whether or not they like to have control over people. It turned out that these were slightly modified versions of the Narcissistic Personality Inventory and the Aggression Scale, which are psychological questionnaires often used for research and diagnosis. There was another survey that included a numbered table asking players, in order to be able to change their name again to what they actually wanted, and I believe if they didn't do this, there was a $10 fee associated, asking them how many times they had hurt others in the past 7 days, how many times they had fought back when struck, how many times they called people names, or even encouraged others to fight. When asked for clarity on how Riot had decided which names to suspend, the answer from an official spokesperson on the forums was, quote, "I won't go into the specifics, but it was a mixture of things which include feedback from players, individual audits by a rioter, magic, and a lot of alcohol," end quote. Point being, Riot Games was psychologically probing their player base, but it gets worse. As per an MIT Game Lab seminar in 2013, Geoffrey Lynn stated point blank that Riot Games has extensive access to the socioeconomic status of their players in certain countries, as well as age, sex, education levels, and more.
We even have data that extends beyond the game. For some countries, we even have their SES, their education scores, their age, even their gender. And, socioeconomic status. Yeah. And we can correlate any of these data with in-game data as well.
According to him, they can correlate any of this data with in-game data as well, and let's harken back to the fact that they were serving Narcissistic Personality Inventory and Aggression Scale questions to their player base. And far from being finished, as per a conference on the Psychological Science YouTube channel, he was offering this data to all labs in psychology and many other fields.
So to wrap up, we do want to open our doors to all labs in psychology and many other fields as well. And the new process that we have on our website is pretty simple. So we're taking 1 to 3 page proposals from labs, and it's pretty straightforward stuff. A main question, data that you would like from the company, proposed analysis and predicted outcomes, and mutual value to your field and to game designers, right? How can we make the online experience better as a result of your study?
To reiterate here, Wired was referring to Riot Games as the world's largest virtual psychology lab in 2015. In that same article, Jeffrey Lynn states, quote, "When we first started, applying classic psychological theories was the most logical approach, but as we settled in and better understood how to look at human behaviors online, we started digging in more and more into bleeding edge stuff," end quote. Riot was running behavioral experiments utilizing colored chat messages. That one was called the Optimus Primer experiment, I think. They were running experiments on degrees of punishment, interpersonal dynamics, and more. They ramped these up into the use of narcissistic personality questionnaires and aggression metrics in an effort to delve into the psyche of toxic players, but we're still not done. Towards the end of his time at the company, Jeffrey Lynn was beginning to influence other platforms. At GDC 15, he hosted a discussion of the psychology behind shadow banning, a tactic now employed by nearly all major tech firms, including YouTube. And he did so through the lens of a direct partnership with Reddit, where Riot Games had helped in an experiment whereby certain content creators were shadow banned to test efficacy and results.
In the early days of the internet, silence ban players could learn that they could get away with these behaviors. They know that you were seeing the behaviors, they know that you could be damaged by the behaviors, and nothing would be done. But with shadow bans, we've changed the power, right? We've given the power back to the neutral and positive players. The negative player never really knows if they lost their microphone or their megaphone. And in a recent collaboration with Reddit to reduce negative posts, we saw just one shadow ban improve the behaviors of 79% of posters. Little tweaks like these can stop the minority from inflicting their perception, their reality, on your community.
As another smaller example, in 2014, I believe, Riot implemented a system where those who reported a player for misconduct would be notified themselves if action had resulted in punishment. This was meant to give gratification signals to those who reported their peers and modify the rates at which this behavior occurred. As far as I can tell, this is the first online example of the policy being created, and now, again, a large number of major tech and gaming companies utilize this method, from Activision Blizzard to social media like Twitter and beyond. Jeffrey Lynn, also known as Riot Light, entered Riot Games with a degree and doctorate in cognitive psychology and cognitive neuroscience. He pioneered systems that are now used all across gaming and the wider tech industry, while simultaneously spurring widespread adoption of new buzzwords and cultural framing in video games. His effort to eradicate toxic behavior turned Riot into a massive digital psych lab as he ran experiments on players, while a fanbase formed around his habit of publicly shaming and humiliating people on various forums because he unilaterally decided that they deserved it. His experience with psychological manipulation transcends even Riot Games, with an official patent on his LinkedIn page that refers to a psychological phenomenon which is utilized to effectively advertise product branding even while a user is in fast forward, aka a method by which you can brute force advertisements into people's brains, even if they aren't deliberately watching them. He proceeded to offer the data collected through experimentation on the League of Legends community to other companies, and even partnered with Reddit many years ago during the early phases of testing, as well as perfecting, the concept of shadow banning. But to go even further, in a quote given to The Verge, March of 2015, Jeffrey Lynn stated, quote, "We realized that if we really want to improve these online interactions, we have to go beyond League of Legends. We're not alone in this space," end quote. And it was clarified that Riot was working with other game developers, internet companies, and schools to share data and best practices. I'll keep this part short because it's less relevant to the story than other portions, but somewhat necessary for context on his eventual exit from Riot Games and who he really was. Jeffrey Lynn was accused by an ex-girlfriend of psychological abuse. A flurry of scandals hit him from all sides at one particular point. The allegations were that he had multiple affairs and relationships with other women, and then filed a lawsuit against his ex-fiancée because she kept the ring. A lot of things, a lot of drama, which would likely be entirely irrelevant if his career had not been built on the destruction of anyone he deemed to be toxic while orchestrating psychological experimentation and analysis on the League of Legends community. His departure from Riot Games in 2016 led to Magic Leap, then Facebook, and now Jeffrey Lynn, also known as Light, the man who turned League of Legends into a quasi-psych lab of behavior modification and experimentation, is the creative director at what may very well be the company most likely to create a working version of the metaverse. His work impacted countless other tech and gaming companies along the way, with untold further impact that we simply don't know about at this particular point. And that impact was to govern the behavior of people that he deemed as toxic, while personally humiliating them when given the options. The idea of toxic behavior has become a lightning rod for criticism of specific video game communities. It is a phrase echoed in various forms by gaming media, legacy media, and outside voices, while it gains further traction as a justification for companies to create systems that suppress peer-to-peer interaction, or at the very least, highly govern it. Stamping out toxicity is a funnel by which companies may justify any number of restrictive policies, and all of it was born from a man who turned one of the world's most popular video games into a psych experiment, as he overstepped professional boundaries and helped refine suppression techniques that now plague multiple separate industries, including social media, widespread. Jeffrey Lynn, also known as Riot Light, is one of the most influential people in the history of modern gaming, and yet very few people know precisely why or how. Hopefully more of them do now.
Okay, guys, now, I told you to make your skin crawl, right? Narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths run the entire gaming industry. The meta, the whole thing that's going on with Valorant at the moment, it's all, we're all guinea pigs for an experiment for the MMO. I'll discuss that in the next part of the video in chapter 2. But guys, things are bad across the board. Gaming has stopped being a development of entertainment products for fun, and it has become the worst, most toxic, hateful, dangerous place to be in industry itself, in any industry in the world right now, right? You'd be safer working at a steel smelting plant than you would be working in IT. It's a very, very, very hateful, toxic industry. And it doesn't matter if it's gaming or it's mainstream IT like I worked in. I got out and went to teaching after doing a stint in corporate, doing other stuff, marketing, because it has become so malevolent in the IT industry. Very cutthroat, so many psychopaths running the show, so many narcissists molding how the industry works. There's no words I've got left for how toxic Riot Games now is. And what we're going through with Valorant, you're about to find out in the next episode. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one. I'm Death Valley, and I'll catch you in the Wasteland. Cheers.